Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We've been talking about parliamentary supremacy versus what's happening as far as the Supreme Court is concerned. The right to legislate as far as the parliament is concerned, and the right to interpret legislation, which is the purview of the Supreme Court. All of these things run side by side, but recently, of course, the events we've seen, particularly of the last couple of days, has shown a certain kind of infringement. Of course, the government maintains that the Supreme Court is infringing on the mandate of the Parliament. We've seen legislation that has passed through, has been waiting, certain technicalities being clamped down, the preemptive injunction that has also been issued by the Supreme Court. In the wake of all these developments, we'll be talking about what we can expect from the court, what we can expect from the government. It seems to be a season of your move versus my move. Let's see what happens next. All of that today on Perspective. I have with me Aniq Zafar, who's a political analyst. Thank you for being with us today. We also have with us Barrister Safiullah, Ghauri, who's a legal expert. Thank you for joining us. And Murtaza Solangi, who's a senior journalist. Thank you for joining us today. Ji, Aniq sir, of course, you know, the way that things have happened in the events of the last few weeks, I would say, isn't it? It seems to be like a game. It seems to be like a battle, and that battle is seems not only between the Supreme Court and the Parliament. There's one ensuing within the court as well. How are you looking at things?
Well, I will start by saying that now it appears that it is no more about the constitution, the laws, or the rule of law. Now it is very, very political. As you rightly pointed out, it's about your move against my move. Some of the actions of the honorable judges under the leadership of Honorable Chief Justice of Pakistan, and the formation of the benches, the verdicts, these are very clearly showing that what were the apprehensions of the government, and why did the government wanted to bring in a law and try to regulate the formation of benches and the power of the suo moto and all and appeal against 184(3) judgments. Now it appears that the Supreme Court, some judges of the Supreme Court have also decided that whatever may come, they have to counter it, even if they have to go beyond the scope of their jurisdiction. It is very clear in the recent verdict, which not the verdict, sort of a short order on the first hearing against
the preemptive
injunction, that there was no precedent for it. You cannot stop something which is still in the parliamentary process. This is opening up a huge can of worms.
And I want to talk more about that, as far as, you know, what this will mean for the legal profession, particularly lawyers also, and for the, you know, for precedents for what is to come. Let me go to Barrister Safiullah Ghauri. Safiullah, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Thank you, Mahrukh.
Safiullah, how as a lawyer, how are you looking at the developments in terms of what it means for precedents for the future? Because, you know, as far as for the court to assume jurisdiction, I don't know if that's correct to say or not, with due respect, you know, is it a case of that? Is it a case of them, you know, telling the Parliament that this is your purview, or overstepping, which is what the government is saying? What's your take on this?
So, Mahrukh, I think this whole thing needs now for us to take a step back and try and reflect and see what the Supreme Court has done. Because what they have done is they've gone against the very basic concept of the separation of powers that is enshrined in our constitution. And the constitution at length has an entire chapter on the parliament and the privilege of the parliament. The concept of privilege of the parliament is that the parliament can sit and discuss anything that it so wishes to. It cannot be stopped from discussing something. It may pass a law that does not fulfill constitutional and justice requirements that the Supreme Court could have, after passing of the law, declared to be ultra vires, that the Supreme Court has previous precedents for. So, for instance, the Supreme Court even mentioned the case of Dr. Mubashir Hassan in its judgment, and in which case a law was struck down That's all right. That's something that the Supreme Court has done, and it has been shown to be within the purview of the Constitution.
You're saying that the law, them choosing to strike down a law based on legal principles isn't new. But in this case, it hasn't even become law. Isn't that true?
Exactly. So at this stage, it is just a discussion. Now, what the Supreme Court has done is the Supreme Court has decided that it would take on the role of a watchdog censor board, and it is now going to censor conversations that are going to take place within the parliament. It is now going to decide what the parliamentarians can even discuss, let alone pass. That's a later thing. There was no voting done on this bill. At this stage, it was only a discussion that was taking place, and them deciding that this bill, if it was going to pass, is going to create problems, and therefore regulating what parliamentarians can talk and not talk about is completely taking away the parliamentary privilege. Now the question is, what are the parliamentarians there to do then if they cannot express their minds openly? If they have, if the Supreme Court is going to behave like Pemra is with all channels and is going to decide what conversations can take place, then the Supreme Court might as well take charge of the entire country. There is no need for the parliament.
Safiullah, let's talk. Let me come back to you and we'll talk more on this. I'm going to go to Murtaza Solangi Sahab. Ji, Murtaza Sahab, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Murtaza Sahab, how as a journalist, how are you looking at this? Because, of course, one of the criticisms in this case is that this is a bill which has yet to become law. And the court has, of course, assumed jurisdiction in this case. They've issued a preemptive injunction in this case. They've also commented on, the legislation that is being passed at this time, the haste with which it is being passed according to them. Do you think it's going to be a case of them stepping back now, or do you think it's going to be, again, we're going to see a battle somehow of back and forth between the parliament, because we saw legislation happen yesterday also?
It's an old battle. It's a battle of eroding the powers of the people. If you go and open the Constitution, the very preamble would tell you that the authority is to be exercised by the people of Pakistan through their elected parliament. And the Honorable Barrister already told you our Constitution is based on the trichotomy of powers. And if you, go open the Constitution, there is an article of the Constitution that talks about creation of the courts. Just read Article 175(2). Says no court shall have any jurisdiction save as is or may be conferred on it by the Constitution or by under any law.
But so this has already been confirmed conferred on the Supreme Court. I mean, that's not the issue at this time, isn't it? The Supreme Court saying that this is about their own rules, this is about their own procedure, and trying to safeguard them and not wanting the Parliament to infringe on that. Do you think it's about that authority? It's about that privilege, about of the office of one man?
The barrister would tell you that the Constitution is very clear that the Parliament can legislate on anything, on any matter that falls within the purview of the federal legislative list. And the federal legislative list is clearly explained in 4th schedule, section 55.
I think there are some there are some qualifications to that. I will come back to you. Legal side of things, whether procedure of the Supreme Court can be legislated upon. Those are questions, of course, again. But the issue really is that who's going to answer these questions, who's going to interpret these questions, and that is invariably also the Supreme Court. I will come back to you on that. Aniq Zafar, that those are also issues, right? For as far as giving rights to the Supreme Court is concerned. I will of course go to Safiullah on this also. But as I understand, there is some argument, there is some debate on whether procedure of the Supreme Court can be enacted upon, and whether, of course, for the Constitution you need 2/3 majority.
Well, this debate has been going on whether Parliament can legislate into on that subject or not, or whether it should be a simple act of Parliament or it should be an amendment. But again, as constitution or law, all these questions are fluid, and given Pakistan's circumstances where we are faced with different legal and political challenges every few years, these questions will keep emerging. But here now the fundamental question is that whether the Parliament has that sovereign character or not. Now we are faced with a situation where even if a Parliament passes an amendment, we have seen that in this process of the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court acquiring or assuming jurisdiction, we have seen in the case of 18th Amendment that it was challenged despite there is a clear constitutional clear clause of the Constitution which says that no amendment can be challenged in the court. But it was challenged in the court, it was taken up by the court. They did not actually go to strike it down, but they used that that petition as sort of a blackmail to ask the Parliament to amend, to bring amendments in the judicial appointment process. My submission is that until unless we get clear that what is the role of the the Parliament, and once Parliament passes a law, even if it's a simple law, it has been passed by a large number of public representatives.
It has to become, it has the status of law, and it has to be respected. Let me go to Faisal Karim Kundi Sahab, who's the Minister for State on Poverty Alleviation. Kundi Sahab, as far as this whole issue is concerned between the Parliament and the judiciary, there is some criticism on the government, that the way that it was promulgated, the haste with which this bill was enacted upon is what is being criticized upon. What does the government say to that?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Whichever government is in power, it's always been criticized. And thing is, when there is a Parliament, what is the duty of the Parliament? The parliamentary duty is to make laws, to do legislation. It's not a debating club. If everything is done by Honorable Supreme Court, then do you think that there is a need of the National Assembly or Senate? Then we can give them everything and let them rule the country also. Previously, you have seen a couple of weeks back when there was no confidence motion going on, and on the one side, judiciary was saying that it is the prerogative of the party head to decide where their member will vote. And after a few days, same judiciary said, no, it's the prerogative of the leader of the House, parliamentary leader of that party, and they have to decide where they have to vote. So two judgments for making one person chief minister or not making chief minister is in front of you. Then a legislation has been done by National Assembly, but you can say Parliament because the both houses has also been done. Then Constitution, the consolidatory budget is binding with the approval of federal government or federal, you can say cabinet or something. It's not that it's been done by order of the Supreme Court that you go and ask the state bank that go and print the notes and bring it here and then give it to the election commission. So I think the one liner will be that I think the all the institutions, if they work in their own jurisdiction, if I say I'm a good anchor, I want to sit there and you said you are a good, I know your job, you are not doing your job properly. Everybody say that we know other job probably, but we don't know our job. So the point of view in this Pakistan People's Party came with the opinion that we should have dialogues with the political parties. We have formed a committee which is headed by Yusuf Raza Gilani, and then David Kamar and Kamar Zaman Kari.
I want to talk about that and the fact that PPP is leading on trying to have talks with the opposition, and whether that is the ultimate solution. Let me come back to you. Let me go to Safiullah. Safiullah, as far as legality of this is concerned, as far as, there is, I was earlier talking to Murtaza Solangi Sahab, as far as procedures of the Supreme Court is concerned, there was some contention that this law was governed by those procedures, and those were out of the purview of the Parliament to legislate on. Can you guide us on that?
So I'm just going to try and make it a little easy to understand. The government was trying to amend the Supreme Court Procedures Act. The Supreme Court has a set of procedures that have been made through an act of the Parliament. The Parliament, if it can pass a law, can also amend a law, can also repeal a law, because it is an act. The Supreme Court also has its internal rules. Those internal rules that the Supreme Court does through delegated legislation, those rules cannot be amended. Those rules stand. And so, for instance, there are various things like the power of the Chief Justice to do several, to take actions, to form benches. The Supreme Court, of course, has its internal controls. But those internal controls are subservient to the act of the Parliament, which grants the Chief Justice that power to make those rules. So there is a hierarchy of laws. So the highest law is the Constitution of Pakistan, which of course stands supreme. Thereafter, there is the legislations that are passed by the court, by the Parliament. From there onwards, from the acts and ordinances.
Amendments to the Constitution will of course require 2/3 majority, correct?
Of course. Correct. And that is precisely why I say that even if the Chief Justice was of the opinion that this law is ultra vires, that this law required constitutional amendment, he could have waited for this law to pass, and he could have then afterwards struck it down by saying that this law does not fulfill the prerequisite requirement of the amendment of Constitution of 2/3 majority, which has not been brought forward. The Chief Justice could have very easily done it. But the problem here is that he has tried to decide what can even be discussed within the National Assembly by the fact that he is now trying to police the internal privileges of the Parliament is what the real problem is. This is something that the Parliament is not trying to do for the Chief Justice, but the Chief Justice has in fact gone out of his purview by doing so. And this brings me to the much needed debate that we now need to have in Pakistan. So we have Kelson's theory of the Grundnorm, which is what is the fountain of the law? Where is the law coming from? Who holds the real power within the country? And for a very long time, we were to believe that the fountain of the law, the Grundnorm of Pakistan, for instance, is the Constitution of Pakistan. In the UK, for instance, it's the Parliament. It's a well-decided fact by the courts there that the Parliament is the supreme law-giving authority. In Pakistan, it's the Constitution. Now, in this case, when the Constitution has in no manner been infringed yet, how is it that the Supreme Court has decided to decide that that any particular act could have somehow affected the Constitution? And if the Supreme Court then has that power, would the Supreme Court not be the supreme authority of Pakistan? That is the law-giving authority. That is the very fountain from which all laws and procedures flow. And just like Kundi Sahab was just saying that since the Supreme Court has now assumed that role, we are now to think that the Supreme Court is the primary legislature of Pakistan and not the National Assembly or the Senate itself. So for all intents and purposes, the Supreme Court has been policing the actions of the executive. The Supreme Court has...
I have to go to Murtaza Sahab, but overall, as far as the Supreme Court is concerned, that's also essentially majorly divided, and that also is a cause of concern at this time for the overall legal process in the country. Let me come back to you on that. Murtaza Sahab, over time we've seen the judges themselves remark that perhaps the solution a bit earlier on, I would say maybe it's a little late now, but they have been saying that the solution is invariably for all political parties to talk to each other and come to a political solution. Do you think that still applies today after what has already transpired between the Parliament and the court? Of course, Kundi Sahab here is saying that the committee has been formed and there is going to be some headway. But do you think that will be a solution in your opinion?
It is essentially a political problem. It's not a legal or constitutional problem. And any solution that's sustainable would only come from the political discourse and political dialogue. Because dragging courts into political crisis would only make courts disputed. Now, in this case,
the courts say that it's the politicians that go to the court, right? I mean, they're the ones who, according to the courts, drag the courts into the political quagmire.
correctly, PTI has gone to court because they are not acting as politicians, especially Mr. Imran Khan has acted more like somebody else other than a politician. I can understand that there are many politicians in his party who have the experience and they have this sagacity and understanding of political processes. But Mr. Khan has always acted as somebody who is not a politician. So it is correct that the problem was brought into the court by PTI. But even their leaders have time and again said that we should address this problem through dialogue and reconciliation. The problem is that even in the past, there have been many occasions when his party has had dialogues, but they have been torpedoed by nobody else but Mr. Khan.
So you think that if he is going to be able to play ball, so to speak, as far as talks are concerned, then it's possible that it will lead to some solution. But as far as the question of the courts maintain that for them the question as far as the elections are concerned is primarily of the 90 days period. But that also has now passed.
There are many things in the Constitution. The good barrister would tell you. 63 is also part of the Constitution that clearly says that floor crossing, when that happens, people would be disqualified. It doesn't say that their votes won't be counted. So here the Supreme Court rewrote the Constitution, and while rewriting, they said we are, trying to understand the soul of the Constitution. They didn't stick to the text. So why are they sticking to text on the 90 days? There are many things in the Constitution, including Article 224 that talks about the caretaker setup. What happens about the care setup now? In Islamabad, you don't have the caretaker setup. And after these supposed May elections, there will be no caretaker governments in Lahore and Peshawar when you hold the National Assembly elections in October. That would torpedo and sabotage the entire constitutional scheme of things. So there are many things. It's just not 90 days thing written in the Constitution.
Right. Thank you for being with us, Murtaza Solangi Sahab. I understand you don't have a lot of time. Thank you for joining us. We'll be taking a short break, after which we'll come back and talk more about what ramifications this will have on overall political and legal process in the next coming weeks. Please stay with us. Welcome back. We've been talking about the bill as far as legislation in the Parliament is concerned, and then, of course, the back and forth exchange that has been happening as far as the Supreme Court and the government is concerned, the Supreme Court and the Parliament is concerned. What can we expect from where things are headed at this time, as far as the issue of elections is concerned, the issue of funds is concerned, which is the new decision that has come out on this elections issue. Aniq Zafar, as far as this issue, as far as the funds are concerned, this is also, in a sense, a deviation, the way that this decision was given, asking the funds be allocated to the Supreme Court. It's certainly not the normal way things have been done. Is it also a confrontation between the government and the Supreme Court again?
Definitely, I think
the powers of the executive.
If we will be saying that there is no confrontation, I think we will be hoodwinking our audience by saying that there is no confrontation right now. It is obvious that Supreme Court increasingly is assuming different roles and now encroaching into the domain of the executive and also the legislature. In terms of National Consolidated Fund, everyone knows that the State Bank of Pakistan does not control it. The Finance Ministry controls it. There is a very interesting suggestion in the order of the Supreme Court that these funds should be allocated and then the government should get an approval for this spending from the parliament later on. Now this is very strange because all spendings by the government have to be approved by the parliament. I know there are supplementary budgets, but again supplementary budgets have to be presented to the parliament, and it is the prerogative, it is the jurisdiction of the parliament, it is their right to decide whether they want to allocate some funds to a particular cause or department or whatever project. So Supreme Court asking the parliament to pass a law or asking the government that they should somehow get it passed by the parliament is not what is normal. It is beyond the routine scope of the Supreme Court's work. But again, as we have been saying that in the past also we have sort of ignored these things. There was this dam fund. It was also not sort of the function of the Supreme Court, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, to run a dam fund. We ignored that.
But Aniq Zafar, that wasn't criticized at the time, and now it's been criticized.
That's what I'm saying, that we have been ignoring. We have been sort of ignoring these things because, I don't know, somehow we forget that even for a good purpose, for a noble purpose, you cannot take a route that is not legal, right? That is not constitutional. That if there is a role that is not ascribed to the Chief Justice of Pakistan through the laws or the Constitution, the Chief Justice of Pakistan cannot take on that role. We have ignored that. Now the Supreme Court is saying that we will be overseeing the spending, or how does that work?
Kundi, as far as the overseeing of spending is concerned, what does the government intend to do? As in, of course, this is a purview of the executive, and they will, of course, have to answer to the Supreme Court as far as this fund is concerned. What do you expect?
The Attorney General on behalf of the government of Pakistan, he is there, and he is always answering the court whatever questions they have, and whatever problem government is facing, he is also trying to convince the Supreme Court that what problems they are facing. Pakistan People's Party always says that we should not go from this constitutional things, whether it's 90 days or whatever. We want elections on one day. It's just for the political discussion. It's not like thing. If you hold election of Punjab and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa right now, suppose next month, when in October, when the election of National Assembly, Sindh and Baluchistan will come, who is the guarantor that the CM Punjab or CM KP will not be involved in their elections? And what is the guarantee that in Punjab PTI is going to win? If the ruling
PTI certainly thinks so, and if they don't,
they think so. We also think so that we will win. If the government allies win the election, will PTI accept it? They will not accept it. Then thing is that we have, we were discussing about the Chief Justice role. There were mistakes done by the politicians also. That at that time when Sakir Misar was holding this dam fund and he was having political functions, he went abroad with specific political party, PTI followers, with PTI office bearers, and he had functions there. You can say dinners or something, reception things, and he was collecting funds for the dam fund. This is not the duty of the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. But at that time, we didn't took that serious action. After 18th Amendment, we brought the 19th Amendment. At that time, we as a politician, we put ourselves on the back foot, and at that time the judge was saying, okay, if you're not going to do this, I'm going to strike down the 18th Amendment. So these things were when politicians were not together, and they were not like standing firm against the Supreme Court. These type of things happened, and now we are saying that why it happens. So all the political forces have to sit together, and we have to give way forward to this Pakistan, to this nation. For that, Pakistan People's Party has formed a committee, which I have said earlier, 3 members committee, we always believe in negotiation, we always believe in dialogues. We are going to convince the government allies. We have a meeting with the Shahzain Bukti. The delegation will be meeting other political parties also, the allies parties also. When we will take this allies party into confidence, then we will go to the opposition. But I'm betting here, as soon as we approach PTI, they will run away. They are just playing with the galleries that we want to sit. When the no confidence motion was adopted and we won the no confidence motion, we asked the PTI guys, let's sit together, do electoral reforms quickly, and then let's go for the election.
Okay.
At that time, they were saying, no, this is conspiracies in US conspiracy, this is Bajwa's conspiracy, this is so and so. And now when they are at the dead end, now they say, okay, let's have dialogues. Because everything, whatever arms or whatever ammunition they have got, it's finished now. So whatever, we still want to sit with political forces and we want to give this nation way forward.
Let me go to Safiullah. Safiullah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Safiullah, what, as you know, leaving the political side of things on one side, as far as the court itself is concerned, it seems to you know, because of the conflict itself, I don't know if compromised is the correct word, but essentially it certainly has been, there has been damage. How do you look at that as far as, you know, the prevalent cases is concerned, the adjudication of those cases is concerned, and overall their whole you know, their whole mandate is concerned as the superior most court of Pakistan?
Mahrukh, it's a question that really hurts me, and I think it's something that pains every lawyer in Pakistan, and not just lawyer. I think it should pain every Pakistani. What we see, the kind of divide that we see, we have never seen before. We see that the Supreme Court is completely divided. There are special benches that are being made. Entire provinces are being left out. So for instance, just to give an example, the recent 8-member bench that was made to try and reject this law preemptively did not have a single judge from KPK or Balochistan. And the Supreme Court knows that. The Supreme Court is aware of the fact that it does not have the support of those provinces. It took judges that had been promoted out of turn, judges who are themselves, you know, in some manner beneficiaries of various controversies. I'm not going to say illegalities, but controversies is the correct word. Not a single one of these judges has a record of being promoted in turn as on the basis of seniority. But that's one thing. Now we also see that apart from the Supreme Court, we have a completely divided Pakistan Bar. We see that the lawyers are within the Pakistan Bar Council. We see the lawyers are divided. We see that the bar associations are divided. Almost all the bar associations right now are against the Supreme Court. Previously in the lawyers movement, we saw that the bar associations of Pakistan were supporting the Supreme Court tooth and nail. And that is how they managed to take out massive movements. This time around, the lawyers themselves are against the Supreme Court. All bars except for Punjab Bar, and this is reflective of the entire scenario within the country. We see that, you know, we have a parliament which passes a law, but we have the president of the country then just acts out of the bounds and law and just strikes, returns those laws, does not fulfill his obligations as the president. We see that these similar problems are taking place within the executive, where certain bureaucrats are siding with the political party and not allowing functions to take place.
It's a very polarized environment generally also, in all respects, whether you talk about the courts, whether you talk about, like you're saying, government functionaries, you talk about, you know, normal discourse also, there's clearly a divide here. And Supreme Court, unfortunately, also is in the thick of it now.
I think the Supreme Court is the one that's causing leading by this entire thing.
Let me come back to you. I'm going to go to Aniq Zafar. Aniq Zafar, you know, one of the criticisms of the legislation, like I said, is the haste with which it happened. The question is, for a long time we've been talking about reform, and, you know, reform as far as judicial reforms are concerned were on the agenda of the last government also, as far as PTI is concerned, but somehow they didn't follow through. Isn't this also indicative of the need to do that, you know, and perhaps this is a first step in that direction?
Number one, the argument of haste, I think, is now no more relevant, because after all, the bill was passed by the National Assembly, then it went to the Senate of Pakistan, then it was sent to the President, then the President sent it back, then the joint sitting of the both houses passed it, then it is again lying with the president, and it will become a law after passing of 10 days. So the question of haste is no more relevant. So we should not be talking about that. As far as the requirement for reforms is concerned, we very well know that the judicial system of Pakistan has sort of become dysfunctional in the sense that it takes years and years and years for people to get justice. There are hundreds and thousands of cases which are pending in the courts of Pakistan. Even in the Supreme Court of Pakistan, as far as I remember, if I remember correctly, there are more than 55,000 cases pending in the Supreme Court of Pakistan. And the Supreme Court of Pakistan is seized with the questions of political nature, as we have seen. We were saying that politicians have gone into the Supreme Court. Yes, the judicialization of politics is also, the responsibility of that also lies on the political elite of Pakistan also. But for example, in this case, two journalists have approached the Supreme Court, not the political parties. The question of these. Then again, we will have to decide the ambit of 184(3). Now we are discussing the wires of a law under 184(3).
But the question is 184(3) was subject of criticism for a long time.
Yeah, that is what I am saying, that these issues need to be addressed. Otherwise, if each Chief Justice expands the scope of 184(3), then there will be no end. And the Supreme Court will then just be dealing with 184(3), no other matter, no other legal issues. The fundamental role of Supreme Court has three types of jurisdiction, but fundamentally it is the last appellate court. And that is where the majority of the people of Pakistan have to look towards the Supreme Court to get justice from there. But what we are saying is that Supreme Court is now seized with 184(3) in at least 20 or 30 petitions every year of political nature.
Right. Kundi sahab, again, as far as this whole issue of reform is concerned, the way that you've gone into reforming or changing 184(3), isn't it also time now to talk about overall judicial reform? Because delay of cases is an issue. The way that adjudication happens is an issue. Dates, lawyers have for a long time said that, there are a multitude of issues they've been facing. Why doesn't the government go down that road? Why don't you, take a step and reform there also is needed? It's the order of the day.
Mahrukh, we are celebrating the Golden Jubilee of Constitution of Pakistan. And we still don't know who is going to run this country. First we have to decide, right now this is the, I think, time that we should decide who is going to run this country. Which institution is going to run this country. Because if whatever decision is done in the parliament and it's been struck down in the Supreme Court or in courts, so then what's the use of the parliament being sitting here? So your point of view is also think that there's a lot of cases pending in the judiciary, either it's lower court or higher court. High Court or Supreme Courts. The other thing is that we are knocking at the door of Supreme Court from last 12 years regarding Shahi Zulfikar Ali Bhutto case. When Zardari Sahab was President of Pakistan, he has sent the reference to the Supreme Court of Pakistan to give to look into this reference of Shahi Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, and we want justice for him. We are celebrating Golden Jubilee of this Constitution. The person who has given us the Constitution of Pakistan, he is still looking for the justice in Pakistan, that I should be given justice, and he is not getting justice. Similarly, Shahid Mohtarma Benazir Bhutto case is also pending in Supreme Court, and we have always asked this courts to listen to these cases. A few days back on the 4th April, the Prime Minister stood up in the Parliament also, and they have passed the resolution also that Supreme Court should look into this case. This is the right time of the country. In this country, we have to decide that what we have to do. The thing is that if all the institutions, if they start working within their jurisdiction, and if they don't encroach other institutions, I think the country can run smoothly. But if we do it.
Fair enough. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. Thank you so much for being with us. Aniq Zafar Saab, Faisal, Karim, Kundi Saab, thank you for joining us. Of course, the recent conflict has also exposed a lot of loopholes within our judicial process, which have, for a long time been talked about. Perhaps, again, it is time for an all-around reform of the judicial system at this time. There are delays, there are numerous problems being faced by litigants, ordinary litigants, every day. And this has also come to notice that, of course, when the court is embroiled in political questions, invariably there are times when issues that are relevant to the common men, litigants, who come to court from miles away to get justice, those issues invariably get ignored. Perhaps we can all move towards that kind of reform where there can be relief all round. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.